it was a private mercenary army, and the whole affair reveals how risky it is to put big capitalists in charge of their own military, right? The privatization of the military has been going on everywhere. The U.S. has kept was it Blackstone? I forget the name of it. Our private military. I mean, the CIA and NSA use private military, but they keep them under control. You see, they don't let them. The Russians let this guy run, particularly in Africa and places, and then found him useful when the Ukraine war erupted here. And then they had to tiger by the tail because this guy was kind of unstable. Well, I don't know if he was unstable, but there were some funny things going on between Prigozhin and maybe the West. It was known in Africa he was talking to some people from the West, whether they're CIA or whatever, who knows, right? The problem with Prigozhin was he was getting rich off this war. He had almost a $2 billion per year contract with the Russian military Ministry of Defense, $2 billion. He was getting paid $1 billion to fund his troops, and he was getting something like $900 million because before he got into this role, he was a big restaurateur oligarch, and he was providing a lot of the food and food supplies to the Russian army. So he had these two big contracts, almost $2 billion. And in March, that got cut off. The Ministry of Defense said, no, we're not renewing your contract. Well, so here was this guy with $2 billion with a private army, and now he had no money to pay his private army. He was getting desperate, I think. And maybe that's why he was talking to other people, he's treating it as a business, a profit center. And also, he was going to be exposed if he didn't have his Wagner troops behind him. And if he couldn't pay them, they were going somewhere else. At the same time, the Russian Ministry of Defense was saying to the Wagner fighters and said, come on, sign a contract with us, with the Russian army, and we'll pay you more. So they were really hitting Prigozhin in the pocketbook. For whatever reason, I don't know, they wanted to pull the plug on him, and he knew it, and he was pissed off with the Ministry of Defense, and he was, saying a lot of things before, his march on Moscow against the Ministry of Defense here. So there was a war going on within the war, political war, the Ministry of Defense and Prigozhin here, and they cut him off at the monetary knees, right? He had, I think that contract ended in like April or May, right? So he had no money. And he was going to lose the support of all his troops, which was his trump card, right? So for whatever reasons, it's not too clear, he decided to, quote, march on Moscow. I think he wanted just a big publicity, and he probably thought that his buddy Putin, because they were close, would mediate the conflict between him and Ministry of Defense. Well, he was wrong in that assumption. There's no way Putin's going to go against his military, his army, because Prigozhin is small change compared to that. And plus, how could Putin really cut a deal with this guy after he took his, it wasn't the total Wagner force, it was just part of it, that was very closely allied to Prigozhin, that went on this march on Moscow. And they didn't go very far. But they did, shoot down some Russian planes, and as they went north, which made it impossible for this guy. And Putin was very clever in the deals that he cut. Get him out of the picture, send him to Belarus, right? And then who knows where he went? He didn't stay in Belarus. He was, who knows where he went. and he was reportedly trying to find new customers for the Wagner Group. Well, where are you going to find new customers if they're not in Russia? Well, they're going to be in the West somewhere, or maybe Africa. Who knows? You know. But he was trying to find a revenue flow here, so he could keep his forces intact, right? And then, of course, somehow he got on a plane, and well, who knows who did it? Well, you know, fingers point certain directions is more likely than not. We'll never know. Was he really on the plane? I think he was. You know, I think it's a far-fetched conspiracy to say that he and Putin faked his death. I mean, you know, that's Mission Impossible kind of movie theme, you know. I don't think that happened. I think he's gone, and I think the Russians learned a lesson about private, at least using them so close to home. They may resurrect something like that in Africa, you know, in support of their client friends there in Niger, Mali. You might see it restored, but who knows?